What happens when fame collides with the untamed wild? We often think celebrities are shielded by fortune, fame, and bodyguards, but sometimes the biggest danger isn't another person at all. It's nature itself. These are the stories that leave you stunned, shaking your head and whispering, "How is that even possible?" From beloved stars to rising talents, their endings were as shocking as they were unforgettable. Let's dive into 16 celebrity lives ended in ways you'll never forget. John Batten. The glamorous pilot who rivaled Amelia Earhart met an ending few could believe. Joan Batten was once called the Greta Garbo of the skies. Born in Rotorua, New Zealand in 1909, she was a daring aviatrix who set world records in the 1930s, charming the world with both her skill and her elegance. Newspapers adored her, crowds celebrated her, and she became a household name. But her final chapter was shockingly different from the one she had written in the clouds. In her 70s, Jeanne lived quietly in Palma de Mallorca, Spain. There, a simple incident changed everything. She was bitten by a dog. For most, it would have been an inconvenience. But the bite led to an infection, reportedly rabies, that spread quickly. In 1982, at 73 years old, Joan Batten tragically passed away. The saddest twist? Her body lay undiscovered for days. The same woman who once thrilled audiences by crossing oceans in a single-engine plane was lost in such an unexpected and lonely way. Even today, historians say her passing was one of aviation's most tragic ironies. Joan Batten once conquered the skies, outpacing storms and setting records that stunned her generation. But her death reminds us that nature, even in its smallest form, can prove more dangerous than any flight through turbulence. A legend of the air grounded forever by something as ordinary and as unpredictable as a dog's bite. Captain Jack Bonavita, Hollywood's first animal star trainer, never imagined the predator he raised would take his life. Captain Jack Bonavita was a colorful figure in early Hollywood. Born in Philadelphia in 1865, he wasn't just a silent-era actor and writer, he was one of the most respected animal trainers of his time. Audiences were mesmerized by his daring routines with wild animals, especially lions and bears. He brought danger to the stage long before stunt doubles and safety barriers. But in 1917, that danger came crashing down. While working with a massive polar bear, a creature he believed he had under control, things went terribly wrong. The animal attacked him during a show, leaving him fatally injured. The crowd, stunned, had witnessed one of the most horrifying tragedies in performance history. Bonavita's life was filled with spectacle and boldness. He lived to thrill audiences and believed he could tame nature for entertainment. But as many animal experts later pointed out, wild creatures never truly lose their instincts. His death sent shockwaves through Hollywood and forced a deeper conversation about using animals for spectacle. He was laid to rest at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in an unmarked grave. The man who gave audiences unforgettable shows with beasts of the wild was ultimately undone by the very power he tried to command. It's a reminder that the spotlight can shine bright, but sometimes it blinds you to danger just a heartbeat away. Dawn Brancheau, a performer loved by millions, lost her life to the animal she loved most. Dawn Brancheau was a trainer at SeaWorld in Orlando, Florida, known for her radiant smile and deep bond with the orcas she worked with. Born in Cedar Lake, Indiana in 1969, she had dreamed of this career since childhood. Her passion for marine life was unmatched, and she became one of the park's most recognizable faces. But in February of 2010, tragedy struck. During a live show, the orca named Tilikum suddenly grabbed her, pulling her into the water. The powerful animal, weighing over 12,000 pounds, left Dawn with no chance of escape. The horrifying incident was witnessed by stunned spectators, leaving an entire nation shocked. Her death sparked global debate about keeping orcas in captivity. Many argued the tragedy was inevitable, that no amount of training or love could erase the instincts of a massive predator. Documentaries later exposed the darker side of marine parks, forever linking Broncho's name to a broader fight over animal welfare. Dawn's family remembered her as someone who died doing what she loved. And that's true, she spent her life pursuing her passion for animals. Yet her death stands as a sobering reminder that even the most experienced trainer can never fully predict the behavior of the wild. The world lost not just a performer, but a vibrant soul whose dedication came with the highest price. Jeff Brazier. A young adventurer vanished into the sea, leaving behind only questions and fear. Jeff Brazier wasn't a Hollywood star, but in Australia, his tragic story made headlines around the world. At just 26 years old, he was living life to the fullest snorkeling off the coast near Perth in the late 1990s. The sun was shining, the ocean calm. But beneath the waves lurked a predator older than humanity itself. The shark. While exploring the waters, Brazier was attacked. Reports say it happened so suddenly that he had no time to escape. Witnesses described the scene as chaotic and terrifying. Rescue teams searched desperately, but his body was never recovered. For his family and friends, the loss was devastating, not only because of his young age, but because there was no closure. Shark attacks have always fascinated and horrified the public. Movies have turned them into blockbuster thrillers, but the reality is far more chilling. Jeff's death was a painful reminder that the ocean, for all its beauty, holds dangers beyond imagination. What makes his story unforgettable is the combination of youth promise and the suddenness of the event. One moment he was exploring, the next he was gone, claimed by the sea in a way that still echoes in Australian coastal history. His name lives on as part of the haunting list of shark attack victims, ordinary people who paid the ultimate price for stepping into the predator's domain. Alan Campbell. The man who worked with elephants never expected one would turn on him so violently. Alan Campbell was a skilled animal trainer born in Jacksonville, Florida in 1956. By the 1990s, he had built a career as a respected elephant handler. He worked with Tyke, a performing elephant who was a crowd favorite in shows across the United States. But beneath the glitter of circus lights, Tyke's story was darker. Reports suggested the elephant had endured years of mistreatment, leading to unpredictable behavior. In August of 1994, in Honolulu, Hawaii, Tyke snapped. During a performance, she charged, crushing Alan Campbell in front of a horrified audience. The rampage continued through city streets, leaving chaos in its wake before Tyke herself was brought down. Alan's death was both shocking and heartbreaking. He had dedicated his life to working with animals, but his career ended in the most brutal way possible. The incident also sparked widespread outrage about the use of elephants in circuses. Activists pointed to Tyke's violent outburst as proof that wild animals should never be forced to perform under unnatural conditions. The tragedy of Alan Campbell is twofold: the sudden loss of a respected trainer and the painful realization that the industry he worked for may have contributed to its own downfall. His story is often cited as a turning point in public perception of circus animals, and his name lives on in debates about the ethics of entertainment. Azaria Chamberlain. Sometimes the smallest victims leave the biggest shockwaves. In 1980, Australia was captivated by a story almost too unbelievable to process. 2-month-old Azaria Chamberlain was camping with her family near Uluru, then widely known as Ayers Rock. In the quiet of night, her parents reported the unthinkable. A wild dingo had entered their tent and taken their baby. Search teams scoured the area, but Azaria's body was never recovered. Only scraps of clothing later found near a dingo den pointed to what might have happened. The tragedy might have ended as a horrifying but straightforward wildlife attack, but public opinion twisted the story. Many refused to believe a dingo could take a child. Instead, suspicion fell on the mother, Lindy Chamberlain, who was convicted and spent 3 years in prison before being exonerated. The case dominated headlines across the world, inspiring books, endless debates, and even a Hollywood film, A Cry in the Dark, starring Meryl Streep. But behind the courtroom drama and media frenzy was a simple, devastating fact. A baby had been lost to nature in the harshest way possible. Azaria's story remains one of Australia's most famous tragedies. To this day, her name is invoked whenever people speak about the dangers of camping in the outback. The cruelty was twofold: the terrifying loss of an infant and the injustice her family endured afterward. A tiny life gone in an instant, yet remembered around the world decades later. Reverend George Went Hensley. The man who believed he was immune to nature's power met the ultimate test. George Went Hensley was born in the late 19th century in Virginia and became known for one thing above all: his daring and controversial practice of handling venomous snakes. He believed stubbornly that he could safely tame them with his bare hands. By the mid-20th century, Hensley had gained notoriety across the United States for his fearless public displays. Rattlesnakes, copperheads, you name it, he gripped them and held them aloft as if daring fate itself. To audiences, it was both thrilling and terrifying, but to Hensley, it was a badge of courage. In 1955, his bravado came to a tragic end. During a gathering in Florida, one of the snakes struck, sinking its fangs into him. Unlike his earlier encounters, there was no recovery. Within hours, George Went Hensley was gone. The irony was staggering. A man who had made his reputation on the belief that he could overcome nature's deadliest reptiles was taken by exactly what he flaunted. His death fueled debates for years about whether people should ever test themselves against such creatures. His story is remembered as both a cautionary tale and a tragic reminder of human stubbornness. Sometimes believing you can defy nature doesn't make you stronger. It only seals your fate. Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter loved around the globe, met his end in the most shocking way imaginable. Steve Irwin was more than a television personality. He was an international phenomenon. With his khaki outfit, infectious enthusiasm, and iconic catchphrases, he brought the wild into living rooms across the planet. Born in Ferntree Gully, Australia, in 1962, Steve had been around dangerous animals his entire life. Crocodiles, snakes, and venomous creatures of all kinds, he treated them as old friends. But in 2006, while filming a documentary off the coast of Queensland, tragedy struck. Irwin was swimming with a stingray when, in a freak accident, its barb pierced his chest and struck his heart. Despite frantic efforts to save him, Steve Irwin died at just 44 years old. The shock was immediate and global. Fans refused to believe that someone so full of life could be gone in an instant. The irony was painful. Steve had spent decades working with animals considered among the most dangerous on Earth, yet it was a usually docile stingray that claimed him. His death reshaped how the world looked at wildlife entertainment. Tributes poured in from every continent, and his zoo in Queensland became a place of pilgrimage for those who admired him. His legacy lives on through his children, Bindi and Robert, who continue his mission to educate the world about conservation. Steve Irwin proved that passion can inspire millions, but his passing reminds us that even experts aren't immune to the unpredictable power of the natural world. Taylor Mitchell. A rising singer-songwriter was silenced in the woods by a predator few expected. Taylor Mitchell was born in Toronto in 1990 and quickly became a promising voice in Canada's folk music scene. With a soulful sound and heartfelt lyrics, she was nominated for a Canadian Folk Music Award at just 19 years old. She had the kind of potential that hinted at a long, beautiful career. In October of 2009, Taylor set out on a hiking trip in Nova Scotia. The weather was crisp, the trail serene, but what happened next was something no one could have predicted. A pair of coyotes attacked her. Unlike most coyote encounters which end with the animals retreating, this was relentless. Passers-by tried desperately to help, but the injuries were too severe. Taylor Mitchell died in the hospital shortly after, shocking not just her fans, but wildlife experts everywhere. Attacks of this kind are exceedingly rare, making her death both horrifying and surreal. The news spread quickly, not just because of her age, but because of her rising star status. People asked, how could a young artist on the verge of success be lost in such a random and savage way? Her story became a sobering reminder that even the most innocent-seeming animals can prove unpredictable. Taylor Mitchell's music lives on, but the cruel brevity of her life left a permanent scar on Canada's cultural memory. Dr. Richard Rood. A scientist who studied health risks became the victim of one. Dr. Richard Rood wasn't a household celebrity in the entertainment sense, but in the world of epidemiology, he was highly respected. Born in New York City in 1937, he dedicated his life to understanding diseases and protecting public health. His work took him to many countries, but it was a research trip in Africa that became his undoing. In 2006, while canoeing on the Limpopo River in Botswana, Richard was suddenly pulled from the boat by a massive crocodile. Witnesses were helpless as the reptile dragged him under, vanishing into the murky waters. The attack was swift, brutal, and final. His body was never recovered. For colleagues and loved ones, the loss was unbearable. Here was a man who had spent his career studying the threats posed by disease, only to fall victim to one of nature's oldest predators. The cruel irony wasn't lost on anyone. His death highlighted the risks researchers face when traveling through remote and wild landscapes. It also added to the chilling record of crocodile attacks in Africa, where the reptiles have coexisted with human settlements for centuries. Dr. Richard Rood's story is remembered as both a tragedy and a symbol of nature's indifference. It doesn't matter how brilliant or careful you are when wild instincts strike, even the sharpest minds can be left defenseless. Joseph Slowinski. The man who studied venom lost his life to it. Joseph Slowinski was born in New York City in 1962 and quickly became one of the world's top herpetologists. A scientist at heart, he dedicated his career to the study of reptiles and amphibians. By the late 1990s, his expertise was unmatched. He published papers, authored books, and traveled widely, often venturing into dangerous territories to study rare species. In 2001, Slowinski was deep in the remote forests of Myanmar, leading an expedition to identify new species. It was the kind of work he lived for: adventurous, risky, and scientifically groundbreaking. But during the trip, he was bitten by a banded krayat, a snake whose venom is among the deadliest in Asia. With no antivenom available, his colleagues could do little but watch as the effects took hold. For 29 hours, he held on, conscious of what was happening to him. His team tried everything possible in their remote setting, but help was too far away. Slowinski died at just 38 years old. His death stunned the scientific community. Here was a man who had dedicated his life to understanding reptiles undone by the very creature he studied. In 2008, a biography titled The Snake Charmer was published, capturing his brilliance and the tragedy of his final expedition. Slowinski's passing stands as both an inspiration and a warning. It showed the incredible lengths scientists will go to expand our knowledge, but also the razor-thin line between discovery and disaster when you face nature in its rawest form. Timothy Treadwell and Amy Huguenard. Two people who loved bears became their victims. Timothy Treadwell was an environmentalist and amateur filmmaker from Long Island, born in 1957. He became famous for living among wild grizzly bears in Alaska, recording their behavior and insisting he had a special bond with them. His girlfriend, Amy Huguenard, often joined him on these trips, documenting the encounters. For 13 summers, Timothy camped among the bears, sometimes dangerously close, often ignoring the warnings of experts. He filmed hours of footage showing both the beauty and the danger of Alaska's wilderness. But in October 2003, tragedy struck. While staying late in the season, when food was scarce and bears grew desperate, a grizzly attacked their camp. Both Timothy 46 and Amy 37 were killed in one of the most infamous wildlife incidents ever recorded. An audio recording reportedly captured their final moments, though it was never released publicly. 2 years later, Werner Herzog's documentary Grizzly Man revealed their story to the world, sparking endless debate. Some hailed Timothy as a visionary protector of wildlife. Others saw him as reckless, someone who ignored the boundaries between humans and predators. Their deaths remain some of the most haunting in modern wildlife history. The line between passion and peril proved devastatingly thin, and the grizzly bears Timothy loved so much became the very cause of his end. Diane Whipple, a promising athlete, lost her life not in the wild, but right outside her own home. Diane Whipple was born in Princeton, New Jersey in 1967 and became a talented lacrosse player competing at the highest levels. She even represented the United States in the Women's Lacrosse World Cup, earning admiration for her speed and determination. By 2001, Diane was working as a coach and living in San Francisco. One January afternoon, as she returned home to her apartment, her neighbor's 2 massive Presa Canario dogs turned on her in the hallway. The attack was relentless. By the time help arrived, it was too late. Diane, just 33, had been fatally mauled. The case stunned the nation. These weren't wild animals, but domestic pets kept in a city apartment. Questions erupted. How had the owners allowed such dangerous dogs to live in close quarters with neighbors? A high-profile trial followed, leading to convictions for the dogs' caretakers. Diane's death forced a nationwide conversation about dangerous breeds, responsible ownership, and the safety of urban communities. Her loved ones remembered her as an inspiring athlete and mentor whose life was cut short in the most senseless way. The tragedy of Diane Whipple is a chilling reminder. Sometimes danger doesn't lurk in jungles or oceans, it waits right outside your own front door. Grace Wiley, Hollywood's snake queen, got the ending she always predicted. Born in Kansas in 1883, Grace Wiley spent her life surrounded by reptiles. She wasn't just a scientist, she was a showwoman. She supplied snakes for circuses, carnivals, and even Hollywood films. Reporters loved her bold personality and her willingness to handle cobras and vipers with her bare hands. Grace often said she'd rather die from a snake bite than any other cause. In 1948, that prophecy came true. While handling a cobra in Long Beach, California, she was bitten. Within minutes, the venom overwhelmed her. At 65 years old, she was gone. Her death made headlines nationwide. Some called it tragic irony, others claimed it was inevitable. Either way, the woman who lived her life as America's most famous female herpetologist met the exact fate she'd long embraced. Grace Wiley's story reveals the razor edge between fascination and risk. She wanted to show the world the beauty of reptiles, but in doing so, she underestimated the danger. Her name may not be widely known today, but in her time, she was a legend. A daring woman who handled cobras for the camera and ultimately paid with her life. Brittany Speck. A rising equestrian talent was undone by the very animal she loved most. Brittany Speck grew up with horses, riding from a young age and competing in shows across the United States. Her natural ability and fearless approach made her a standout in equestrian circles, with many predicting she would soon rise to international competitions. But in 2008, during a routine training session, tragedy struck. Brittany's horse suddenly spooked, throwing her off. In the chaos, she was trampled, sustaining injuries too severe to survive. She was just 20 years old. For the equestrian world, her death was devastating. Horses are powerful, majestic, and beloved, but accidents with them can be catastrophic. Trainers often speak of the thin margin between elegance and danger in the sport, and Brittany's story became a painful example. Her passing was covered widely in equestrian media, sparking conversations about safety measures in training and competition. Fellow riders remembered her as a passionate, determined young woman whose dreams were cut short before they could fully take flight. The tragedy of Brittany Speck is a reminder that even the animals we build the closest bonds with, those we trust and ride daily, can become unpredictable in a split second. Her life ended not in fame on the world stage, but in a heartbreaking accident that still lingers in the memory of those who knew her. José Padilla Villarreal. The matador who lived for the spotlight was brought down by the beast he faced. José Padilla Villarreal was a Mexican bullfighter whose charisma and daring style made him a star in arenas across Latin America and Spain. From the time he first stepped into the ring, fans admired his flair, his bravery, and his refusal to back down. For him, the corrida was not just tradition, it was art. But in 2010, during a performance in Aguascalientes, Mexico, that artistry turned into tragedy. In the middle of the fight, the bull charged with devastating force, striking him and sending shockwaves through the arena. Spectators watched in horror as José fell fatally gored by the very creature he had spent his life trying to master. The news made headlines around the world. Some saw it as a tragic accident in a sport known for danger, while others pointed to it as evidence of the risks inherent in bullfighting itself. Either way, the loss of Padilla Villarreal was deeply felt. His career had been built on commanding the crowd on Dancing with Danger, but in that final moment, danger won. José's story is remembered as both a tribute to his courage and a chilling reminder of the unpredictability of tradition when it meets raw animal instinct. For centuries, matadors have faced bulls under the hot sun, but rarely has the reality of that peril hit so hard. His life and death are forever etched into the long, controversial history of the bull ring. And there you have it. 16 lives each ended in ways that prove nature always has the final word. From aviators in the skies to performers in the ring, from scientists in the field to stars on the stage, these stories show just how quickly the familiar can turn fatal. Which of these shocked you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe for more unbelievable stories, and remember, when it comes to the wild, the script is never ours to write.